there, Bill. Here I am. Yeah, we're joined now by Seton Motley. He's with the Media Research Center, the Director of Communications for them. He's got some thoughts on this whole thing. Seton, thanks for being here with us from D.C.
I can appreciate it.
All right, so Governor Ed Rendell shows up at this thing with these top dogs. They got everybody from Tom Brokaw to Bob Schieffer of CBS News, and he stands up and says, look, the media coverage of Barack Obama has been embarrassing. And then he goes after MSNBC and is essentially told to sit down, Seton. What do you make of it?
Well, he chose the wrong venue, to paraphrase William Shakespeare, and say, I come not to praise the media, but to bury them. He stands up in the middle of the creme de la creme of journalists in America and says, you guys did a horrendous job this last 6 months, 8 months. And, of course, Judy Woodruff, who's moderating all of this, says, oh, we're going to let Governor Rendell sit down now. And with that comment, the media audience stood up and applauded her telling him to sit down and basically shut up. So
in particular, people like Arianna Huffington, Gwen Ifill, Al Hunt, Chuck Todd.
Yep, I mean, look, it's the big wigs of the media. We're all there in attendance, and they all had the same response, which was, we are very pleased that Judy Woodruff asked him to sit down and speak no more.
You know, was it a fair criticism? Let me ask you that, because he went after, in particular, MSNBC for being really unfair to Hillary Clinton, essentially accusing them of being in the tank for Barack Obama, and saying, in particular, Chris Matthews lost his objectivity in every way in covering this campaign. Is that a fair criticism?
Well, it most certainly is. If you'll recall, Chris Matthews is of the thrill up my leg in response to Obama's speech in last year. I don't know why he said he lost his objectivity in response to the Clintons. I don't know when he had it. But beyond that, as if on cue last night, Keith Olbermann was actually on the air and said, I'm starting to sound like I'm borderline sycophantic. So then he turned to Chris Matthews and said, so I'll stop, you start. So when you have your coverage, as MSNBC does, anchored by Chris Matthews' thrill up my leg, and Keith Olbermann, who is a rabid anti-Bush advocate and rabid anti-Republican advocate, it does call into question the journalistic direction and model of MSNBC.
You know, Bernie Goldberg went on the O'Reilly Factor after that Chris Matthews comment about the thrill up his leg and said, that's not political analyst, that's a man crush. And it seemed like a legitimate criticism of him. But let me ask you this, because Tom Brokaw, who's a respected journalist at NBC News, not MSNBC News, but he's on MSNBC from time to time now, came out and said, look, we are more than Keith Olbermann. We are more than Chris Matthews, who are political commentators who have their point of view, but we have straight news people who cover the political race in a straight way. Is that a fair rebuttal?
Well, they are, if you're talking strictly by population, they are more than Chris Matthews and Keith Olbermann. But it's not as if Brokaw isn't biased. It's not as if NBC Nightly News anchor Brian Williams isn't biased. They are a biased left-wing network. And yes, there's a lot of focus on Keith Olbermann and Chris Matthews because they're more overtly over the top. But clearly, in the story selections and the story omissions that the networks and NBC engage in, clearly they're directed a certain way.
I want to pick up on that because, you know, a lot of viewers just watch TV and they think, okay, that's the news. And I watch it on MS, I watch it on CNN, I watch it on Fox. That's the news. Oftentimes, it's what's not said. It's the angle pursued in the story that evidences a sort of bias. What do you see when you watch the coverage?
Well, I'll just give you an example from last night. Katie Couric refers to yesterday was basically rehabilitation of Michelle Obama's image. CBS last night, Katie Couric refers to her as slightly controversial, but then never explains why. For example, they never played the clip of her saying, for the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country. Now, how you can say she's controversial and yet give no evidence as to why that is an example of what you're talking about. It's an example of bias by omission.
Understood. Interesting discussion, Seton. Thanks so much for your insights on it. Seton Motley, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Megyn.